Okay.
speaker.
I'll ask another question. Who here knows who Dan Park is? Who here knows who Clutch is? Okay, so some Clutch fans. So Dan, I'm glad you could be our first Fireside post-COVID. You've had an illustrious career as a venture capitalist, as an operator, and now CEO of Clutch. So my first question to you is, why'd you leave being a VC to become an operator?
So VC is probably the cushiest job I've ever had. So if there's any VCs out there, power to you. You should stay in that role. I think for me, it was really about empathizing with the founders. I felt it really hard to sit on the other side of the table trying to invest in startups when I hadn't pulled the levers myself and actually run business and actually try to scale a business. And so for me, it was super important to actually be on this other side of the table and scale a business. I spent kind of the last few years before Clutch at Uber, and for me, that was like an incredible learning experience. And I think fell in love with operating and running a business, and I think scaling teams is something I'm super passionate about. And so I think for me, it was the right decision to move from VC to an operator. There's probably a world where I move back, but for now, I'm having a ton of fun running and operating a business.
So can you tell us about your Uber Eats experience? You went to Uber Eats. How big was it? How fast did it scale, and what did you learn there?
Yeah, we've got a few folks here that I worked with back at Uber. There we go. Uber was a really great learning experience for me around scaling and learning and to be comfortable with breaking things. And I think that's kind of the hardest part around scaling a business, is just being comfortable with breaking things. I mean, we went from basically, zero. Toronto here, shout out to Toronto, was the launch city for Uber Eats globally. So the very first order was out of this city. We scaled it to the point where in Canada we were doing almost 1 million deliveries a week. And so 1 million deliveries, and that was kind of 3 years ago. I'm sure it's scaled more since then. And I don't think people understand at that kind of scale, every week there would be a 1 in a million event that would be happening by definition. And so you learn to deal with these problems and things breaking. And at one point, Uber was like, we'd hack things together, and I'm sure you felt it if you used it back in the day. But we were trying to figure things out as we go. And so as we grew, we had to learn how to fix these holes and fix these gaps to make sure that we were servicing the demand as quickly as we could.
And so you grew to 1 million deliveries a day, or a week. Can you give us an example of some of those 1 in a million events?
Some of them I probably can't discuss, but there's no customer that's angrier than someone that hasn't got their food and they're hungry. And so you often get situations where you get very angry customers, and I'm sure, put up your hand if you've had and not necessarily on Uber, but as a food delivery experience, you've had a challenging food delivery experience. I feel like most people can raise their hand. And,
wow.
And who's been angry when their food didn't get there on time and called into support. So I feel like there's a lot of people that have kind of gone through the experience, but I think there's been countless examples of situations where people just, I think, get frustrated with whatever that they're dealing with when it's snowing or when it's raining.
So you went from getting Uber, which you went from 0 to 1 million deliveries a week, to Clutch. First of all, can you explain what Clutch is and why you joined Clutch?
So Clutch is an online platform for car sales. So we sell high-quality cars online, very similar to an Amazon-like experience. We have an inventory of thousands of cars. You click a button, we deliver the car right to your driveway. So the gap that we saw in the market was that in Canada, really the only way to buy a car was two ways. You either go to a dealership, it's a super painful experience, or you meet some stranger in a Tim Hortons parking lot and try to buy their car off of them. So that's what you have in terms of options, and we thought there was a better way to buy and sell cars in this country. So we started Clutch, online platform. You go to clutch.ca, you can pick from, again, thousands of different vehicles, and we'll literally deliver it right to your house.
And you went to be CEO. So how did you learn to be a good CEO?
I think learning is probably the right tense for that verb. I think for me, it's always a constant process. I think that's true for anyone in the job. Learning is kind of the most important thing, and the way I try to keep myself better and make myself learn is by surrounding myself with people that are better than me. And so the team that we've brought on is incredible. We've got great leaders and then that are pushing me every day to become better. And so I think, for anyone, surround yourself with great people that you can learn from and really push you to grow.
And you've been a CEO. Clutch is a local marketplace. I guess Uber Eats was a local marketplace. What are the most insightful learnings or the biggest learnings and challenges running something that has to be replicated city by city?
Are there any other people running marketplace businesses here or part of marketplace businesses? Anyone? No one? Right here, all right. A few marketplace businesses. I think the most challenging thing about any marketplace is really regulating supply and demand. And for us, supply means a great selection of cars, but also a process through which we recondition and make those cars up to our standard. And then on the demand side, making sure that we're pushing marketing and pushing demand to meet that supply. And balancing that is probably the hardest thing around any local marketplace. And that's true of Uber, that's true of Airbnb, that's true of Lyft, that's true of certainly our business. And so any of these local marketplace type businesses require kind of a very careful balance between supply and demand, and to make sure that you're providing great supply and great selection for the consumer and not attracting people to a platform that doesn't have the supply that they want.
So let's talk about supply. You go into COVID, you get supply chain disruptions, people don't want to take public transportation anymore. Inflation's here, apparently used car prices are up significantly. How have you dealt with that?
Yeah, I think let's talk about COVID first. I think COVID, I mean, we're live again, which is fantastic. Very excited to be doing that. I think COVID probably made all of our jobs harder, obviously, and I think the hardest piece for us particularly was around building culture and the team. It's hard enough when you're bringing on new people. We hired 250 people, so they're all getting to know each other, and doing that in a kind of a semi-remote environment is pretty hard. For us, that was a big emphasis in trying to make sure that we were still building those connections. And in terms of inflation and some of the kind of macroeconomic factors, I think that's going to be challenging for all businesses, not just ours. And I think going forward into the next several years, or at least in the several months, I think there's certainly a narrative shift around, growth at all costs towards more reasonable growth, and one where profitability is super important. And so I think narratives change, and I think we're going through that period right now in the tech environment. Clearly seeing that in the market today. And I think the key there is build teams that can adapt and be agile towards different changing situations, because one day it's COVID, the next day it's inflation, the next day it's something else. And so being agile and being able to adapt is probably one of the key attributes you want to be either hiring for or instilling in your teams as startups.
And give me a definition of what does agile and adapt mean. So give us an example of what you've done at Clutch to adjust to the market.
Yeah, I think we're big believers in not putting too many processes in place, and really trying to build tools and processes really quickly. And we're a big user of Airtable, for example. So, I would say until recently, like half our business was run on Airtable. It's a super easy tool to get things up and running on an operational perspective. Our reporting structures are very flat. We don't have a lot of hierarchy around our business. We don't have long process manuals or certainly a lot of bureaucracy, and we're trying to limit that as we continue to grow. And so being able to pivot and move and kind of solve problems very quickly has been a core piece of our business, and something we want to continue to emphasize as we scale the business and bring more people onto the team.
And you've scaled the business significantly. Imagine as you enter a new market, the incumbents are not happy to see you exist. Imagine you saw that with Uber, you see that now with Clutch. How do you deal with the entrenched stakeholders that don't like to see you exist?
I think I get a kick out of it personally. I mean, I think disruption is fun, and the fact that if people are kind of angry and trying to or don't like what you're doing, I think you're onto something. And so if you get a lot of pushback from incumbents, that probably means that you're onto something. Embrace it. I mean, when we were doing food delivery and ride sharing and certainly online car delivery, the incumbents saw that as a threat.
Now, if you can get something that dampens the sounds when the train goes by.
Yeah, there you go. So the incumbents didn't like it, but at the end of the day, if you're seeing incumbents get kind of angry or making a lot of noise, it means you're probably onto something, and so latch onto that and embrace it.
And so you've got incumbents that don't necessarily like you, you've got a local marketplace, and you've got a team that needs to adapt. What has been the most surprising thing over the last 2 years that went well, and what's been the most surprisingly hard thing?
I think the speed at which people have embraced online car sales, I guess, is a little bit surprising. Certainly the pandemic accelerated that, but I think 10 years ago, the concept of buying a pair of shoes online was a little bit strange. Things have evolved, and people being comfortable with buying a car online is certainly more of the norm. When I started, people were like, no one's ever going to buy a car online. That's certainly changed. We've sold thousands and thousands of cars online, and people love the experience. We track our customer experience using an NPS score. That NPS score is 80, which is pretty high when it comes to a consumer experience. So I think that's been kind of like the most surprising and exciting thing over the last couple of years. In terms of, I would say, challenging thing, honestly, it's probably been COVID and managing the team through a pretty challenging time and trying to scale a team in a time where getting together in person was less of the norm. And so hopefully that's starting to be behind us. But I get excited about kind of the next several years because I think we're hopefully slowly getting back to normal here.
And the last question I have for you, for people in the audience looking at a career, what advice do you have when looking to join a startup? How do you know it's the right startup for you to join?
I think the people is probably the most important thing. I think the thing that gets me into work every day is the people that I get to work with. We've got a fantastic team, passionate about delivering this amazing experience for consumers. And so I would say find something that you're interested in terms of a business or a business model, and then kind of look to the team and make sure you're joining a team that you align with culturally and kind of jives with what you believe in. And I think if you can do those things, you'll be extremely successful.
So a lot. I'm going to ask one more question. What's the culture at Clutch like, and why should someone join you?
For us, we're about disruption and trying to make things better. Again, we really focus on the customer experience and making sure that we're delivering a great product. I think a lot of people at the company get very excited about that. I think for us, we're a culture of disrupting. We're trying to change things, move quickly, and really grow as individuals. I think if you're in a place that allows you to grow and really to embrace new challenges and learn new things, the sky's the limit for you. And ultimately, we want people to take on new opportunities and really grow. And I think the folks that are here with me today have certainly seen that through their time here at Clutch. The table's over there. If they want to wave, you can wave. And so I think that's probably the most important thing and something that certainly we value at Clutch for sure.
Thank you so much, Dan, for your time. Thanks for putting up with the less than perfect audio sound. Can I have a round of applause for Dan, please?
Thanks, everyone.